Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hello, this is Zeitgeist Philadelphia Radio. Thank you very much for listening in. It's call ID number 91812 on TalkShoe. That's talkshoe.com. Today we'll have our co-host is Nicole from Light It Up. And we'll be talking about consent, social inclusion, and safe sex. I'm your host, Kevin. Nicole, how are you?
I'm excellent, Kevin. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to talk about all these things because these are things that are, they're very looked over even in our adult society, and it's a very important thing, especially with some of the statistics I read recently that we really need to take control over, our not only our sexual freedom but our sexual safety. So it's really awesome to be able to have a platform to speak about it, more so than just at an event with a little crowd around me and a PA system.
Yeah, I understand. You had a decent crowd, though, that one time when I saw your workshop that a lot of this is based off of. And we've also worked together on other events in the past as well. There's a Tesla information outing that they were giving away information and having, like, DJs. And you had your stand there, like, with the light-up hula hoops and so on. And that was really great that you were able to take part in that and make that a nice, fun environment, as well as like the educational event that it really was as well.
Oh, it was fun to be a part of too. I mean, considering the fact that we were, right there on, the Liberty Bell's lawn, being able to like show all these things. Tesla also is a very, he's a very important man that not nearly enough people know about in terms of his accomplishments, and more importantly, how they affect our everyday lives. So it was really awesome to be able to bring an element of something I love to something I find not only fascinating but very important and interesting as well.
Thank you for being a part of that. It was really fun. But I want to start out with a couple quick little things. It was brought to my attention before the show that not everyone actually knows what the Zeitgeist movement is about. So I want to give a quick overview on what the mission statement is for the Zeitgeist movement. You can find them at zeitgeistmovement.com. Founded in 2008, Zeitgeist Movement is a sustainability advocacy organization which conducts community-based activism and awareness actions through a network of global/regional chapters, project teams, annual events, media, and charity work, of which this show is a part of. The movement's focus includes the recognition that the majority of the social problems that plague the human species at this time are not the sole result of some institutional corruption, absolute scarcity, a political policy, a flaw of human nature, or other commonly held assumptions of causality. Rather, the movement recognizes that issues such as poverty, corruption, pollution, homelessness, war, starvation, and the like appear to be symptoms born out of an outdated social structure. While intermediate reform steps and temporal community support are of interest to the movement, the defining goal is the installation of a new socioeconomic model based upon technologically responsible resource management, allocation, and design through what would be considered the scientific method of reasoning problems and finding optimized solutions. This natural law resource-based economy model is about taking a direct technical approach to social management as opposed to a monetary or even political one. It is about updating the workings of society to the most advanced and proven methods known, leaving behind the damaging consequences, limiting inhibitions which are generated by our current system of monetary exchange, profit, business, and other structural and motivational issues. The movement is loyal to a train of thought, not figures or institutions. The view held is that through the use of socially targeted research and tested understandings in science and technology, we're able to logically arrive at societal applications that could be profoundly more effective in meeting the needs of the human population, increasing public health. There is little reason, there is little reason to assume war, poverty, most crime, and many other monetarily based scarcity effects common in our current model cannot be resolved over time. The range of the movement's activism and awareness campaigns extend from short to long term with methods based explicitly on nonviolent methods of communication. The Zeitgeist movement has no allegiance to country or traditional political platforms. It views the world as a single system and the human species as a single family, and recognizes that all countries must disarm and learn to share resources and ideas if we expect to survive in the long run. Hence, the solutions arrived at and promoted are in the interest to help everyone on Earth, not a select group. Which is part of why this show is going to be not just about consent and sex education, but also social inclusion. Do you have anything that you would like to add at this time?
I mean, I think that first and foremost, let me just say that the mission statement is, I read it earlier, and it's such a good, idea that, we should be using a lot of these statistics and a lot of things that are just pure fact to be governing the way that we deal with a lot of these issues in our social situations. I mean, for example, piggybacking off that, one of the things that I read because, I've been doing a little bit extra sexual research because I wanted to come armed with facts, because I know your audience is very, very intelligent and wants to be armed with the correct knowledge backed up by statistics and facts. So I went ahead and I dug a little deeper than usual. And I mean, even if we just applied these ideas of your mission statement to the way that we look at sexual activity, the impact could be life-changing for people. I mean, as of right now, just to spit something at you that just blew my mind, 1 in 2 sexually active people will actually contract an STD or an STI being a sexually transmitted infection, by the age of 25. So basically half of our population, by the time they're 25, will, have to deal with some kind of STD or STI. And, it's facts like these that when armed with science, we can really do something to take these numbers and really make them minimum. But a lot of our society right now is governed by the idea that we should allow what people deem as morally right to govern the way that we handle this kind of education and the display of this education. Like, most schools still won't teach sexual education and things like that. So I think that, one of the reasons I'm really excited about being on your show and talking about this is because of your mission statement, how you guys approach things, because the approach of sexual safety and social inclusion also, tie in very heavily with the overtones of what you guys try to do in general. And I think that, if more people took the just factual approach instead of the emotional approach to the way they dealt with sex, I think that people would be a lot safer and healthier in the long run. And most of these statistics, 1 in 4 teenagers getting an STD would diminish over time, in these future generations.
Yeah, you've always had a very socially conscious awareness, and I've always appreciated that about you. That said, specifically about the teenagers and whatnot, this episode will actually be for adults. Please share it with maturity when you do share this show with others. We're going to be discussing many topics that are not necessarily safe for work. And one of the things I actually want to mention to you as well is that you had just brought up the moralities that we're governed by. There's a guy by the name of Jonathan Haidt. He did a show on TEDx called The Moral Roots of Liberals and Conservatives. And he mentioned that there's basically like 5 different channels of morality. There's like harm, care, fairness, and reciprocity, and these are like 2 that everybody has. And then there are like many people that are more religiously based and authoritarian indoctrination really based, where they have like in-group and loyalty is one of them. authority and respect is another, and then purity and sanctity is another. So these are all like these, he puts it as like their 5 morality channels. And how when it comes to like in-group things, we even make up groups just to have groups sometimes, even when they aren't needed. Like some groups, when they just like come together as just a group to just meet, they're not necessarily trying to form anything that's inclusive, but nonetheless groups happen, and sometimes there are rivalries that are created between other groups, and they're friendly and fun, and they actually like help boost things. Like, say, imagine like different teams of people that are trying to work on robotics and trying to outdo one another, that sort of thing.
And, I think that with your mention of groups and such, and kind of people subcategorizing and digging down in the trenches, I think that that's a great way for us to channel into, the whole idea of social inclusion in general. A lot of these subgenres of people and these little groups exist because social inclusion is becoming more and more prevalent in our society. We're now able to connect as a whole, especially through the internet. There's so many people who are able to connect in a way that they have never been able to connect before, and that's where I see a lot of these things forming and a lot of these things starting, and I'm sure you see it as well. You can find so many different organizations out there now who can cater to, the different things you're looking into and trying to be a part of. And I think that more and more people, should really indulge in the art of radical inclusion. And for those of you who don't know what radical inclusion are, it's actually, for those in the burning community, their first principle, which is, anyone may be a part of what's going on, and we welcome and we respect their stranger. No prerequisites exist for participation in the community. And I think that that's a very important idea in just everything that you previously just mentioned, and making these groups and forming these bonds and these ties with people who share similar interests, and going deeper into those interests and being able to form, even though they may not be necessary. It's almost like in the music industry, all these subgenres that are now forming because people are finding new sounds and things like that. And I think that, social inclusion is a very, very important thing, that even though, like I just mentioned, we are included in this whole world by this beautiful communication we have through the internet, I think that the physical inclusion becomes a very big part of it as well. And that goes beyond, the sexual aspect that we'll be speaking about today, and just social inclusion as a whole, be a part of what's going on in a very real way. And I like that your movement actually encourages that so much, is to go beyond the screen in a sense and just, create something and be a part of something and give back into that, which you are taking from.
It's really necessary, and not just here, it's all over the world as well. I mean, when you look at the various cultures, even throughout Africa, just as a specific spotlight that I've seen as recent data, it mentioned about how it's rising as of late due to some initiatives that have been created around it. But many females are not getting the amount of education that they need to be receiving, and it's almost as if there's almost twice as many males that are getting a good education, and because of cultural identifiers, women are relegated to different roles that aren't necessarily helping them progress as a society. It's literally holding back the entire society because these women are not getting the proper education they need. And that's also an aspect of social inclusion that needs to be mentioned, as well as beyond things like the Mazzoni Center in Philadelphia is specifically for LGBT gay and lesbian rights, and so transgendered rights and so on. They definitely do a lot of advocacy for them, as well as they even have like rapid HIV testing and STD screening that is available if you go to their website. It's mazzonicenter.org. You can get information about that. These types of programs are free and are available, in case of getting a sexually transmitted disease, and we'll be discussing that later. But I just wanted to mention that there are definitely groups out there that are trying to help the situation when it comes to social inclusion, and unfortunately there are too many groups out there that are just not helping. Unfortunately, when you hear stories about, like, not to point a finger at Russia, but like they had their issues when it came to letting in some of the people that are like skaters and whatnot, and skiers from America who were gay and lesbian and so on, and that became an issue. And these types of social inclusions need to also be considered throughout the world, and that's why this show is, as while it will be mentioning things like the local Mazzoni Center, we also want to tackle problems on a global level as well.
I'm really glad that you posted up about the Mazzoni Center earlier, because the Mazzoni Center and others like them are just a beacon of light in this otherwise dark realm of exploring sexual education. There's this, and we're going to bring this up in a little bit, but there's this whole stigma of prudeness when discussing sexuality and things of that nature. And the reality is sexuality is a part of us as beings. It's our method of procreation, and it also is one of our major methods of pleasure, and it always has been. Masturbation has been, something going on since men lived in caves, and a lot of us are living under this stigma. I mean, myself was included. I'm going to say and go out there and say that I was not in touch with my sexuality until well into my 20s, and, I still struggle with finding my own sexual identity in a lot of senses, but the thing that, a lot of us have to get past or these social stigmas put on, educating ourselves. We're either expected to know everything and just, it's not okay to go and Google about, safe masturbation, or it's not okay to go and Google about, a lot of these things. And places like the Mazzoni Center and other people who are, they will give you a pamphlet. I've passed by there. You can go in there and they'll give you, a little kit with information and, a condom and some lubrication. And it's just, a lot of kids are so scared to address this because they're expected, they have this social pressure, and adults as well, to just know what's going on, or, the taboo to go Google it is too much, where they overlook these centers and they put themselves in sexual situations that are very unsafe. I mean, this one is like this fact right here was really just, it hit me so hard that, less than half of adults ages 18 to 44, so we're talking about a large group of the adult community, have never been tested for anything besides HIV. That's crazy. That just shows you, and this is in the U.S., this just shows you, how much we are, denying ourselves the rights to be safe through education because we're so caught up on the stigma that it's, we don't talk about sex. Sex is, scary. We don't talk about that. That's naughty. And something, there's one thing I read in the Venus Project mission statement and one of the FAQs that you suggested to me, and it was very true. It's all about how you are groomed and how you grow up and how you are taught to think about this and how you are taught to portray this thing. And I think that we as a society really need to stop looking at it from such an emotional standpoint and start understanding that because we are not allowing the education to be the more triumphant part of this situation, we are actually putting ourselves in very unsafe situations. But we'll get more, obviously to the STD parts later, but I really just wanted to, stress the fact that, places like the Mazzoni Center, places that are offering education and that are offering, anything should be more promoted and just be more, known about and not so swept under the rug, just because they may cater to LGBT. That's beautiful. That's something we need. We need more people promoting safety in that community as well, just like we need people promoting safety in low-income areas. Their STD statistics are out of this world, and the same thing in the LGBT community because they're taught to sweep it all under the rug. So, I really appreciate that, these centers exist and that we're able to talk about them on this show and give them a little bit more of a highlight than they're normally getting.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were just, you had mentioned like Burning Man and such, and that while we were also talking about with the social inclusion ideas of how like they even create their own groups and they have their own different camps and they all like kind of compete in their own way, like whether in like a lingerie pillow fight club and stuff like that on the lawn of PDF and so on, and like Playa del Fuego, which is another festival, and like these types of festivals cater to and a more open expression of people being able to do what they want to do, as long as they're being responsible adults, which is the real key to it all. And that's kind of where like the natural law part of this kind of comes into, and I want to go over a little bit of that with the natural law rights of like your own personal. How it really works is simply I own me, you own you, and like as long as you're not hurting me and not hurting anyone around me, you and I are cool. We've got no problems, and it's really that simple. And like if two boxers, they want to climb into the ring together and hammer each other, have fun with that. Use as much force as you want. I don't consider that violence as long as they are both participating of their own free will. And that is pretty much the essence of it. However, like beating someone on the street, that's violent. That's a violation of their natural law rights of self-ownership. Therefore, in the light of sex, while it can be considered fun to have, rough sex or even like having fun fantasy-like stuff go on between consenting adults, that's one thing. It's totally different, on the other hand, when it comes to stuff like the violation of rape, which is a complete violation of another person's natural law rights to self-ownership. It's a theft of their natural law right of choice as well during the present, and then in a long term, it can also be psychologically damaging through that trauma. It is which further continues the violation of that person's self-ownership, because they have to then are stuck with that sort of memory in their mind for the rest of their life. On top of
it's a life-changing experience for somebody, and most people, a lot of people don't fully bounce back sexually from, somebody violating that right. And that's something I'm really glad that you brought up, because, a lot of people don't really fully understand, what consent really means. I get that sometimes, people will put themselves in a situation where they're inebriated or something and things like that. And that's actually one of the biggest situations in which consent really has to be clear. You have a lot of situations out there where, you'll hear about the girl who got really drunk at the party and the guy who had sex with her, and she wakes up and, she might not have necessarily remembered consenting. And even though he might think that, her body language or something was saying yes, she might not have really been saying yes, because she might not have known what she was saying, period. So I'm really glad that you're bringing this up. And I definitely, I think that, our right as a human being to be ourselves and govern our sexuality is huge. And I can be honest with you, going to an event at the burner type of communities, at their center, and really realizing that everybody was so, in control for the most part. Most people in that circumstance are very in control of their sexuality and very cool about it. And it made me so much more comfortable with mine. And not only that, but it makes you more accepting of people in their different ways, which, a lot of people aren't. We are still living in a society where not everybody's accepting of everybody else's sexual practices. And, that's their own thing. But I can say for me, it definitely, becoming a part of the burning community and seeing how people were so in touch and respectful of other people's sexuality in this big way was actually one of the things that led me to even doing this kind of stuff anyway. I wanted to talk about sex more and the education of it more, because I saw these people around me who were just so in touch with themselves in a lot of ways, and the way that they were able to portray their sexuality and be themselves. You know, I've seen plenty of nude people running around, and there's, you know, I'm able to look at them in the eyes and have a conversation with them because their nudity isn't sexual to me anymore. You know what I mean? And I think that that's a huge thing with the human, you know, the natural law. Our natural right to sexuality is, you know, we should be able to be our own sexual beings, and we should be able to have a conversation with someone and them not necessarily, you know, take our nudity or our frankness as being overtly sexual, you know. And I think that also goes hand in hand with understanding what consent is and why it's so important. You know, just because a girl is nude, it doesn't mean she wants you to grab her breast. You know, just because a guy has his penis out, he doesn't want you to touch it. You know, he'll let you know if he wants to. You know what I mean? Like, it's not an open invitation. And I think that, you know, once we all learn what consent actually means, we can go through and live a more sexually free way as a society and as a whole.
One of the jokes I had actually heard during, they had a presentation going on for like new people at Playa del Fuego at one point, and one of they had these little minute moments that were like little public service announcements in between setups of the show that was going on. And one of the words that they used, and it was while they were talking about consent, was the best lubrication is communication. So
I love that.
I definitely, yeah, I really want to encourage people to talk about sexuality with each other and whatever type of situations they're getting into. There are definitely like polyamorous groups out there which are also, they can love more than one person. It's really that simple. And when they do that, they should just make sure that they stay safe in that situation. And if you end up in a situation where you're in some sort of like orgy type of situation, and you have multiple people consenting to do whatever, make sure that you change condoms and and so on when you change partners, because otherwise you could both contract and then pass along an STD in a matter of minutes, and that sort of thing is not really what don't become a public health hazard.
Yeah, nobody wants to leave an orgy with herpes. You know, nobody wants to walk out of the orgy room and then a week later, you know, you've got a little jock itch and you're like, oh no, what just happened there? And you know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because in all reality, that 30 seconds of changing a condom in between partners, or washing your hand and your penis or your toy in between anal and vaginal play, I mean, we're definitely going to go through the cleanliness of things a little bit, but that's all really important to, you know, really owning one's sexual health and being, you know, taking advantage of your natural right. You also have the natural right to be sexually safe, and that includes, as you said before, communicating. I do a 2-hour class at this. My class is mutated, by the way. You haven't heard it in a few years, but we have gotten bigger and grander, and now I teach it for about 2 hours. And we cover more than just anal sex. When I first started covering it, I kept it to mostly anal, because that's a form of sexuality that's very it's seen as very taboo, and it's not usually done correctly, and then people have bad experiences. So I kind of wanted to help, you know, people understand what was really going on there. But now it's mutated into 2 hours of just me going over a lot of the sexual health and you know, covering everything and trying to really give everybody this overall nice, neatly wrapped package of this is why these things are important. And about 20 to 30 minutes of that is usually spent talking about communication and why we can't be scared to tell our partner no. We can't be scared to tell our partner, I don't like this. And we can't be scared to tell our partner, you know, this is hurting me. On the opposite end, please be vocal about what you do like, you know, like, oh, this is awesome, I love this, touch me more here, you know, and or use very strong physical, you know, language to let them know that you positively like this. But verbally, we need to be very okay with no I don't like this, I'm not comfortable. And I think that once we all become very comfortable with that, as a girl, I'm going to be real, I faked orgasms for a long time because I wanted to make my partner, feel better about themselves, and I gave up my own almost sexuality to make this person's ego feel better. But then I realized that I'm kind of shortchanging myself at the end of the day. So once I learned how to be more vocal and communicative, I can say that it has been great for me and my partner since then, and it's something that we really overlook. So, communication definitely, go ahead. Sorry.
Subject of saying no specifically, when you hear that no or are told stop in the middle of something, you need to stop. Like I had mentioned this to you, as a joke, that I almost want this to be a public service announcement, so that in like 10 years when my son goes to college and stuff, he can listen to this and have something that he knows what's right and wrong, and what to really think about and what to worry about and what he can enjoy. And one of those things that you should definitely worry about is when someone says no or stop or I don't want to go any further, you need to pay attention to that. I can't stress enough the very simple 2-word phrase, don't rape. It's that simple. Like in our culture, we don't teach that to our sons enough. As far as I'm concerned, we have so many programs for women talking about how to dress modestly or don't go into certain social situations because of this, that, and the other thing. But how about we actually talk to the men and tell them flat out, do not rape. End of story. Like, stop.
Yeah, and I think
do that.
I think that arming men with, sexual education as well is very important. Like, yeah, okay, so you might feel the need to rape a chick. Well, you don't know what STD that girl has. You don't know what's going on. I mean, if any of us out there have seen the movie Kids, at the end of the movie, he goes and rapes the girl who just got diagnosed with HIV. And it's like, I think that the mere thought of sexual education and safety is actually something that could really prevent it, and not only in the way that somebody might have an STD, but I feel like if we allow our young men in our society to be more comfortable and in touch with their sexuality, there won't be such repression to the point of where some of these kids are at a breaking point, Like, we make these things so taboo, and we make these things so like, oh, well, you're young, you're not allowed to know about this yet. Well, guess what? He's got the internet, and he's watching some stuff that you're never going to cover in the classroom, and those classes that teach abstinence aren't even going to get anywhere near a condom. So now you've got this kid sitting there with these ideas, and he has no healthy way to talk about them, because most parents are also afraid of talking to their children about sex as well, and that manifests into adulthood, and things like that can create bad sexual practices later on in life. They can create a lack of respect for both men and women depending on their sexual preference, and it creates a lack of respect within oneself too sexually. So by not giving these people, especially young men, the tools to be educated about sexual healthiness and safety, we're ultimately putting them in danger, and in some cases putting other people in danger through repressing these natural things. Something that you mentioned when we were speaking earlier about this talk, and it's something that's really resonated with me, because it's not the first society in which I've heard it, is, you've got these societies out there who, like these, tribes out in very remote areas who will be naked all the time, and the young boys aren't going and raping the girls, and there's no even thought of sexuality and the nudity of things. They're just, having regular conversations. Sexuality is pursued naturally, but the level of sexual, problems is almost non-existent. And it's not even like they're going out there and doing crazy things either. There's not as much need for BDSM or other types of, sexual acts that require dominance and obedience. There's just a very balanced level and healthy level of sexual activity. And I think that we can take a page from that book and just apply that to our own youth and our own adults as well. I think that we forsake the adults a lot, too. We I've mentioned the youth, quite a few times, but I think we also need to apply this to adults as well. Adults become adults, and then they think they don't have to learn anything else about sexuality because they know that the penis goes in the vagina, or whatever other orifice you have going on, and this goes in the mouth, and this goes in the anal cavity, and this, that, and the third. And we think that we know it, and it's cool. And I can't begin to tell you, since I taught my sex class, how many adults have walked up to me, people are well in their 30s, and they're like, wow, I never knew that. And because of our openness and talking about it and communicating and teaching them about communication, I can't begin to tell you how many people have come up to me and had a better sexual experience and a more pleasurable experience because they've allowed themselves to connect with themselves, connect with their partners, and they've also communicated and given either consent or said, no, I don't like this anymore. Like, I don't like that you do this, and it's not pleasurable for me, and have taking control of their sex lives, and that's awesome because it definitely creates a whole new demographic of people who are practicing safety, and that makes me feel good that they're out there. But we definitely need to start reaching people on a more broad scale. There needs to stop being a stigma about giving out condoms and other things that are safe. And condoms should also, they should be more readily available to people. And it shouldn't be such a scary thing to take one out of somebody's hand. There shouldn't be this shame anymore, if you will.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And part of that is the funny thing is that I'm interconnected with someone. Like, there's a couple synchronicities going on in this. Like, the person, her name is Katie. You might have known her from years gone by in this community that we're in as well. But she's now in Australia. The point is that 6 years ago, she, on her birthday, took me to come and see the first Zeitgeist film. And she, for many years, worked at the Mazzoni Center as well. And when she would go to festivals, she would literally take like almost a trash bag full of condoms with her, like not like a kitchen trash bag, but like something like a waste bag, like a smaller bag, but like a decent sized carry-all bag full of condoms to the festival, and just hand them out to people because she knows the realities of the situation, and that when there are adults at play and they're going to do things, and it's much better that she thought it would just be more helpful for the community to just go there and start handing them out to people and help the situation in that capacity.
And honestly, that is one of my favorite things I've ever seen at an event. And I know exactly who you're talking about. She is a wonderful woman. When I want to say back in 2006, 2007, I went up to Canada, which is a lot more open with its embrace of education about sex and, drug use and stuff like that. Not saying they condone it, but they are open about educating, which is amazing. And I went into this booth, and it was called TRIP, the Toronto Raver Intervention Project, I believe it was, or Information Project, something of that nature. And they had these little postcards, these very bright neon postcards. And these postcards, each and every one of them, and you could take as many as you wanted, taught you about safe sex, or, in some cases, safety with drugs and what these drugs actually do to you. Kids, do a lot of things, and adults do a lot of things, and they don't know exactly what they're doing. But the thing that really got me was just, and they covered all kinds of safe sex, safe toy play, girl on girl, boy on boy, anal, oral, regular just vaginal intercourse. They had condoms, they had lubes, they had spermicides, they had a whole just table devoted to educating you and your partner on what you might potentially be doing in your tent later. And they made it fun, and they made it interesting, and they were very factual, and I fell in love with them at that moment. And that whole idea of just going out there and spreading education and encouraging condom use. I mean, I know my company lighted up. A few years ago, we bought, I want to say well over 1,000 condoms and slapped a sticker on them and passed them out all over the EDM scene because, it's important to let people know that safety is cool and safety is fun and safety is awesome, because if you're safe, you get to keep having sex. and you're not having, to take a regular medication. You're not having genital warts warp your whole, area to the point of where you're ashamed to even take off your pants. There's a lot of things out there that with a simple condom conversation that's, interesting and awesome, which is why, most of the time I teach my sex class, it's very funny, very, casual, very awesome, but we're very serious about safety. Safety is the number one thing I preach, because it's just so important right now, and people need to understand that it's totally cool to use condoms. It's way cooler to use condoms than it is to go bareback and then be itching and uncomfortable for the next couple weeks. And some people will go with chlamydia their whole lives and not get it diagnosed. Same thing with herpes. 1 out of 5 people has herpes, and most of them have no idea that they do because they don't get an outbreak. But it's there, to the point of where by 2018, they're going to stop testing for it because we're pretty much all going to have some form of the herpes simplex virus, whether it be 1 or 2. So, we're in this really real time where you've got things like super gonorrhea going around. Super gonorrhea, you can't take a medication really for that because even though they might be able to control a little bit of it, it's beyond the usual meds that they have. These things are evolving. Viruses are living organisms. They're living things that evolve, and they will adapt to survive. And we're at the point now where, we're able to control most things with medication, but things are coming out right now that are unreal. And a lot of it is due to the gross misuse of, the sexual safety products out there. So, I think that we definitely need to encourage more people to go out there and wear condoms and use spermicides. And it's not just about getting pregnant. That's what I think a lot of people don't understand, is condom use isn't just to prevent you from having a child. Condom use is actually to prevent you from getting one of the, 15, 16 different active STDs that are just going around right now.
And like you just said, it's not even about straight people. It's also about lesbians, and they have things out there called dental dams that are the perfect use for that situation. And they are, so it's not like there aren't options out there as well.
Yeah, just don't be afraid to go stand in the aisle. Don't be ashamed to go into Walmart and walk into the aisle where they sell the sexual safety things and stand there and have an awkward eye contact potentially with somebody next to you, but leave that place with a spermicide lubricant or with condoms, more importantly condoms, because those are the things preventing STDs, and leave walking out of there knowing that you are not only helping yourself, you're helping the next person you sleep with and the person they sleep with after that, and that, and that, and that.
Exactly. I think we've covered most of what I was really concerned about. I guess part of this comes down to a lot of it takes different strokes for different folks. That's really like the most basic and fundamental part of the social inclusion. And we also really like part of the reason why the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement specifically do their advocacy towards the resource-based economy model of how we should be basically setting up systems of sustainability to help us. Like on our last episode, we did one where a guy was talking about doing inner city work where we can change vertical farms or make change old warehouses into vertical farms and just give away food for free. There are other social issues that we have a lot of larger ramifications for us when it comes to money. And one of that is like sex workers as well. They do exist. Prostitution is considered like the oldest job for a reason, and it's really sad that when there is that scarcity situation, women find themselves in a position where they don't have any choice but to put themselves in possibly a very difficult position. And those sorts of things are also just something that could be naturally phased out if we lived in a moneyless society. So I wanted to mention that as part of something that like the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement speaks about in the idea of getting away from using money as a whole. Because imagine like if like in today's culture we have these politicians and you hear about them in some sort of sex scandal with a prostitute or whatever. Well, they wouldn't be able to get into that sort of situation if we didn't have the money to allow that sort of corruption. So I just wanted to throw that out there as another reason why advocacy for that sort of level of sustainability can hit a lot of different social nuances that people don't necessarily always consider.
I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because an interesting tidbit of information that I've read about in my days is I read this book years ago, and it was prostitutes giving their account of why they're in the business, what the business is like for them, this, that, and the third, basically along those lines of giving their own short little memoir of how they ended up here and why they do it and why do they keep doing it. And you're right. The number one reason is because they need to sustain, and like you said, sex is one of the oldest trades in the book, and a lot of these women, the book I read was actually talking about something that happened in France back in, I want to say, the 60s or 70s. I haven't read this book in many years, so don't quote me on this one, but basically a bunch of prostitutes went on strike because the police were abusing them, and they were being these women were basically being targeted and brutalized and such. And when you read it from their perspective of why they get into these things and why they continue these things, most people hear prostitute in America and they think drug-crazed woman out there on the streets trying to have sex so that she can fuel her drug habit. And while those do exist in astounding numbers, there's also a lot of women out there who just, they came from a situation where they don't have education or have a real, way to earn money, and the sex trade is a very easy trade to get into. No matter what, they won't judge you, or they'll let you come in and do what you got to do. There's no background checks for the most part in a lot of it, let alone, sometimes an ID check. So these women are able to flow and do what they got to do and meet these Johns, and they put themselves in very horrendously violent and terrible situations. They're afraid to speak about it to anybody because we've put so much pressure, to do what you got to do and make money however you can. And let's be real, the cost of living versus how much people make on average is terrible. So, if you've got a woman with some children, I feel like if presented with the opportunity, sometimes for some it's with minimum skills and not too much hope, it is very easy to take that easy way out. And it's not necessarily an easy way out either, because it's one of the hardest things that a woman can do in a lot of situations, and men too. Men do it as well. There's a lot of men out there who are very overlooked in this. We say prostitution, we think of women. There's a lot of men, young men, old men, a lot of just people out there caught up in this stigma to make money and selling themselves, and a lot of them aren't okay with what they're doing. A lot of them don't see that as a good thing, and for those who do, more power to you. If you're in control of your sexuality like that, I have the utmost respect for it. But a lot of the people who are subjected to that, the reality is that's not something they planned for at 15 years old. And it's a sad
there's
situation.
There's a very large difference between, like, when we go to our festivals and we see a dancing pole set up and a girl just hops on it and is showing off because she's enjoying showing off. It's a very different when a girl has to go and become a dancer at a strip club in order to make her way through college or pay the rent and so on. And
the one with college is,
she didn't. Yeah.
And the thing with college is a girl shouldn't have to subject herself to that to get an education. Nobody should have to subject themselves to being a slave of any system to get an education. And it's, it's a sad reality for, I know quite a few girls in their 20s who are going to school and are dancing their way through school because that's what they have to do, because the way that our system is set up right now, you have to jump through hoops of fire to get an education. You have to put yourself in debt for 30 years to get it. And even then, you're not guaranteed a job. So it's like, these people are putting themselves in these situations that they're sexually uncomfortable, some of them, and they're doing it to create a better life for themselves because that's what you're supposed to get out of an education. And it's terrible that we're even putting them in that situation. Sorry to cut you off there, but that's something that really bugs me as well, is that, our price of education is so unbelievably high, which knowledge should be free, that we're forcing people to feel like they have to exploit themselves in order to get it.
Exactly. And that is part of the fundamental issues of capitalism or any monetarism, is the fact that you have to subject yourself, even whether it be in capitalism or even communism. It really doesn't matter. I mean, you have to subject yourself to an employer in order to gain wages, in order to then survive. So right there's a fundamental lack of consent involved in that process. So that kind of takes away from our natural law rights as an individual, and that's part of the reason why these things, I believe they need to be talked about, and further understandings of these principles needs to become more widespread, as well as, thankfully, you were just talking about how education is so expensive. Thankfully, there are so many things that are going on the internet that are changing that, between free online courses and you can get all the if you really want to just learn, you can go to MIT and just go into their library and look at a lot of the stuff that they've got available. These are some of the things that are at least available to us. Even Philadelphia's school system is really not that spectacular. It's losing a lot of funding year after year after year. And it's almost a good thing that it exists, things like Khan Academy or K-12 and so on. These are other online group like khanacademy.org, I think it is, or it might be .com, same thing with the K-12. These are educations that if you have access to a computer, a child can get a free education right through 12th grade. So,
which is awesome. And another thing is, too, I just want to throw this out there, which I'm sure most of the listeners understand and know, but make sure that when you're, looking at some of these educational resources and Googling some things and whatnot, you're definitely doing a little reference check, because actually earlier I was just, trying to look up some more stuff to talk about today, and I looked up natural right sexual. And now, if you're looking up the natural right of sexuality, that you figure that there's going to be some pretty diverse stuff on the nature of sexuality and how we govern it. And most of it, was anti-homosexuality propaganda. That came up on that Google search, and that, made me a little uneasy that people will go out there and Google things about sexuality, and the whole front page is basically telling them, it's not okay to be this way, and it's not okay to live like this. So when you're looking up things and you're looking at resources, be sure that you're clear that these resources don't have an agenda that's anything other than giving you an education.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's a lot of online people online who speak about the quote unquote gay agenda, and I kind of have to laugh at that. That's kind of like saying that Martin Luther King had a black agenda during the civil rights movement. And realistically, the whole issue is the fact that everybody's looking all these different peoples are trying to just become socially inclusive. And it's that simple. They want to be a part of society. They want to not be looked down upon for what they do, either for how they look or what they do behind closed doors or anywhere else. They happen to be free enough to be able to enjoy themselves. And it's that sort of pursuit of happiness that is often very much overlooked when it comes to our historical paper proclamations.
Yeah, I think that, going with what you were just saying, I think that one of the one of the biggest problems I see in what's going on, especially in terms of integrating everybody in society, is people are still hung up on these stigmas and these things that have for decades now been a part of our thinking and have been subtly spoon-fed to us through TV and media and a lot of mainstream stuff. Like, there's still this really weird hesitation to just let everybody be who they are, and it's almost like there's going to be this slipping of control, and we get that, we understand that you don't want to lose control of the masses and stuff like that, and having everybody kind of panic sometimes is definitely something that is a tactic in a lot of the news outlets. But I mean, let's be real, the amount of violence between what they deem to be okay couples, heterosexual couples, is far more superior than instances in which you hear about in other sexual situations. Not saying they don't exist, but to, still blindly run with this whole, straight is right thing and stuff like that. I don't want to get too preachy because I know everybody's got their own way of thinking, but I mean, come on, man. Like, let's be real. It's 2014. Homosexuality and people dressing as what they want and what they feel to be has been going on since the dawn of time. Men have been fornicating with other men, and women have been fornicating with other women since before any real, quote unquote, religious law said anything against any of these things. So to still in 2014, when we have access to this information in our hands, on our smartphones, and on all of these things, to still be buying into propaganda that is feeding you anything but facts is just, it's bogus, like, you have the facts at your fingertips. If you really want to look for them, you'll find them. And going with the, the mission statement of the Zeitgeist movement, we should be out there looking for facts and governing and ruling our society in a way that's, scientific, statistical, and a little bit more, fact-based than just the way that we're feeling in this moment because these two guys are holding hands or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, we don't need figureheads and institutions is basically what it said, yeah. Exactly.
Pretty much, we for the people, by the people, man. I will always, that's the one part of all of our doctrines that really just, we need to really enact that. It needs to be for the people and by the people. It needs to be something that's, beneficial to all, and it doesn't make people feel like they're not included anymore. It's actually, I'm kind of glad we're on this topic because I was, looking into to speak about this. I always like to cover my bases, so I was looking into some things about, homosexual hate crimes and stuff like that, and ways that people will come at people. And it's such a touchy subject that even Google in my searches tried to stop me and make me put in like one of those make sure you're not a robot codes and stuff like that to make sure I was really looking this stuff up. And that made me uneasy that it's so deep like that still, and it's still that bad that Google has to give me a little, hey, are you sure you want to look at this kind of warning. And it's 2014, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, come on, like I said, these things have been going on since the dawn of time, since two people could lay next to each other and create warmth, you know what I mean? And we're still going to, like, have such hate and such problems spewing out, people living their own lives because of these doctrines out there that, make people feel bad about who they are. And that kind of segues into my whole wanting to talk about being comfortable within one's own sexuality and being comfortable within one's own skin, which I'm sure you definitely probably have some tales of your own from being around people who are very comfortable. I think we are both blessed to be in a social circle that are of people who are very comfortable with their sexuality and make you feel at ease with yours as well. And
yeah.
Once you've had a taste of that life, it's kind of hard to look at the way that people are still living and almost like, this ancient idea of like sexuality is bad. No.
Yeah. I mean, specifically when you see it on, like, what bugs me out is when I see posters online, like they throw up a meme that's against gay marriage, but it's from a group called Liberty News.
Yeah.
Like, it breaks my brain like that. The contrast of concept there of like you're from something called Liberty News, and like Liberty,
but it's liberty
right?
how they see fit.
Yeah, but yet
You know?
you want to shut down someone else's liberty on how they can live their life, and it seems a ridiculous concept to me. It seems more like a lot of propaganda from, say, insurance companies that really don't want to have to pay out insurance to when the couple gets married. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Everybody in the financial world is trembling at the thought of, same-sex couples finally across the board being able to get married because the amount of insurance that's going to have to be taken out and this, that, and the third. They're facing this whole thing, and of course they're looking at it in the totally wrong way. I mean, you should want to insure people and make sure they're safe, but anyway, financially that's not smart for them, however they feel about it. And it's like, on the grand scheme of things, furthermore than that, for me, the whole idea of marriage really does fall down to, if I ever did get married to my significant other, it would be more so for insurance and legal purposes, which it's sad that it's come to that. But I understand why, the thing of marriage is very, very a big deal. If your lover is on their deathbed fighting for their life because of your sexual practices, you shouldn't not be able to see this person. You shouldn't be able to you can't hold their hand because you're not their husband or wife. Well, I'm their partner. Should be able to be here for, I've been with this person, and I've heard horror stories about stuff like that. So, a lot of people think, gay marriage, it's this religious thing and yada, yada, yada. First of all, most of them have no, they don't care about the religious aspect. For a lot of people, it's about the rights to be together, the rights to see this person through to the end, the rights to be on our insurance together because we live together and we share this life together, and there's no reason we shouldn't be able to do these things. And I think that a lot of people get that very, very messed up when they think about gay marriage. They think it's all about, the sanctity of Christianity. Well, let's be real. Let's talk about heterosexual marriage and divorce rates, because right now about half of all couples that get married are divorced within a few years. So if there's a sanctity of marriage left, I would love to know where it exists. Maybe in some small town in the Midwest somewhere, but on a whole, divorce is a everyday thing. Most people aren't giving marriage the respect that they're fighting for it to deserve, and the reason that they're excluding homosexuals from being able to do it. Like, I could understand if the divorce rate was like 3% and, people weren't going out and just living these crazy lives with wives and husbands and all this stuff, but the reality is the sanctity of marriage that these people are fighting to protect has been gone for a very long time. So to say that and use that as a platform as that's why homosexuals can't get married, that's stupid. That's bogus. That's retarded. That's like, why are you going to do that to somebody? Why are you going to tell this person that they can't get married because of something that's already failing in the first place? That's ridiculous.
Exactly. It's these social conditions that have created this situation. Yeah. And it's literally exactly what happened with my wife and I, which is the really funny part about it, because after we were living together for 7 months, apparently she was able to get me put on her insurance at her work because she's in banking, and apparently like 25% of banking is like gay males. And so they have in their like policies that like you were allowed to, if you lived with a certain person for X amount of time, put them on your insurance policy in the same way that marriages were. At a certain point, we were actually told that they were getting rid of the policy for straight people because we could just go and get married. So that's what we literally actually had to do, is at the end of the year, before they end the year, when it ended, like their policy ended, we actually had to get married in order to be able to keep the insurance. So these outdated social systems that are all money driven can be changed, and they should be changed. We don't have to live by these sorts of paradigms anymore, and it can free us on a lot of different levels, as we're discovering during this conversation.
Oh yeah, I mean, and if we just lifted some of the cost off of, now granted there are a lot of people that will do STD testing and stuff like that for free, but if you don't know about those centers and you don't know about those things, the costs to be a healthy sexual individual are insane. It's crazy how much it is just to get some birth control, and I mean they're considering giving free birth control out now as just a preventative measure, but the reality is you're still looking at, for a regular pap smear every year, which ladies, you should be getting those. You should totally be getting your pap smears once a year. That's really important for your vaginal health. Things like that, they are expensive. It's really, really hard. Now, granted, we do have healthcare on the rise in a lot of ways. I don't want to get too far into that one because that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day. But, at the end of the day, a lot of people are actually gaining access to healthcare right now with the way things are going that never had healthcare before, me being one of them. I finally have healthcare, which is amazing. I'm able to go do my stuff and make sure my body is okay. But before I had this healthcare, while I was living as an adult and trying to, make it and survive, if I wanted to go to the GYN and I didn't go to the free clinic, you're looking at $200 to $300, $400 and upwards just to go get your stuff checked out that you should be getting once a year, just to go, talk to somebody about vaginal health and stuff like that. And I think that, things like that are something that needs to, those reforms need to change. Those things really need to happen to where girls and boys have more access to affordable sexual health care, especially into their adulthood. You've got a lot of people out there. The pregnancy rates right now are crazy amongst, young adults 18 to 24 who, I'm not knocking you at 18 to 24. Most of people between 18 and 24 are getting their lives together, but most people between 18 and 24 are still very young and living their lives and, weren't necessarily ready to have children. And with a simple education of, this is contraceptive, this is that, and a way to make it affordable and accessible, they might have, been able to prolong something that they weren't necessarily ready for. And, I think we've both seen our fair share, and all viewers have seen their fair share of people having children before they're ready. And, a simple little bit of education can really make or break the difference. And again, affordability of this, this care and this, education is another huge thing. I think that needs to be reformed all around. And as we said before, condoms for everybody, condoms for everybody. Just run through the streets throwing condoms out. Make sure you don't moop, but, condoms for everyone.
Yeah, matter out of place is what MOOP stands for, matter out of place. Then basically it's like litter when it comes to like festival grounds and such. So yeah, for those who don't know, but yeah, exactly. Like it's one, but like handing out condoms is a great way to make sure that people actually have the capacity to just enjoy themselves in a safe way, so as to make sure that like people are gonna most likely do what they want to do anyway, assuming they can get away with it and it's not illegal, because a lot of the things we're actually speaking about on this show may even be illegal depending on the state or country that you're in. So if you are taking part in those sorts of practices, especially like it comes to like how we mentioned sex workers and prostitution, make sure that you're forcing your partners to wear protection in order to make sure that you don't pass along any diseases or get passed along anything, of course, as well.
Yeah, I think that we definitely need to revisit STD statistics for a second here and just talk about how serious safety really is, because as much as we've mentioned it a lot, I know, and it's been a big overtone in this show, but I think it's something that can't be stressed enough because as I said to you before, we're currently under this crazy statistic where 1 out of every 2 people, that means half of people, again, will contract an STD or an STI by the age of 25. Most people have no idea they ever even got it. And that's what the scary thing is. And a lot of this can be prevented by, again, communicating with somebody. If you have something, not telling somebody that you have something is one of the worst things you can possibly do. It's very terrible. it's mean, it's downright wrong, and it's selfish. And, if you do have an STD, that's the first thing you should be telling somebody when you know that there's a chance that sexual practice might happen. That's definitely something huge. And I think that another thing, that we have to really get on the regimen on is go get tested twice a year. I know with some things they say get tested once a year. No. Get tested twice a year. You should be out there, especially if you are sexually promiscuous in any way, not knocking on the promiscuity. I support you going out there and getting yours. But if you're going to do that, people, if that's something that's going to happen, you need to be safe about it. You need to get tested, and you need to be open with your partner and let them know what's going on. And if anybody ever, says in a sexual situation like, I won't wear a condom, then you should probably reevaluate sleeping with that person, because if they're not willing to, let themselves take away from some of their fun, whatever their reason may be, to make you feel at ease and comfortable with this situation, then you probably shouldn't be sleeping with that person. They probably don't care about you or your safety. And to them, this is a very purely selfish thing. Another thing that, I found to be super, super interesting is the Center for Disease Control and Infection actually shows that every year there are almost 20 million new sexually transmitted infections diagnosed in everybody, in just adults everywhere. Every year in the United States, 20 million STIs are, diagnosed. Now let's just think about that. That's not even the people who don't go to the doctor, and I know a lot of them out there. I know a lot of my friends who don't go to the doctor as regularly as they should, nor practice safe sex, and, that's what's diagnosed. So in the grand scheme of things, you're probably talking closer to 30 million people out there. Because if it's saying that, most people don't go get tested, if you're looking at, half of adults getting tested, period, you're talking, you probably got an extra 10 million people out there who don't know that they have an STD, and you're talking 30 million people walking around, a year with a sexually transmitted disease or infection, and a lot of them probably aren't telling their partners, hey, this is what's going on, this is what I'm experiencing, yada, yada. So I think that, again, everybody should go out there and do themselves a favor, especially if they're promiscuous. Look at what's going on right now sexually. Look at, what's happening in terms of race, and kind of humble yourself and realize that you are not invincible. Just because you haven't gotten AIDS yet doesn't mean you can't get it. Same thing with herpes, chlamydia, everything else that comes along. And just don't be ashamed to communicate it. I think anybody out there, myself included, would much rather have the conversation with somebody, hey, listen, I have herpes and I just want you to know, as opposed to having the conversation on the telephone, you're the only person I slept with, why do I have herpes? If they even answer your calls after that. So, and that's another one.
When you've got when you consider those numbers of like almost 30 million people, and the fact that there's only 300 million people in America, that means like 1 in 10 is basically what you're aiming at here. Consider that when you go out to a party and go to try and pick someone up or so on and so forth, like you really need to start, if not just start, but continue safe sex practices in order to like just simply not be a public health hazard. It's that simple.
Yeah, I think people don't realize like that. When you walk around with a sexually transmitted disease, or you walk around not, testing yourself for a sexually transmitted disease, you're basically a walking biohazard. You're basically a problem for everybody around you, especially those that you are, sleeping with, because you're not doing your part in the sexual community. It's all about, one of the things that I really really pressure people about is taking control of one's sexuality and being responsible for one's sexuality. And a huge part of that is taking the responsibility to get that butt over to a STD testing center, twice a month, and making sure that everything's running cool. And if you have a sexual encounter with somebody, listen, things happen. Sometimes, you forget to put the condom on. Not that you forget, but you're caught up in the moment. I know all about these things. I teach the sex class because I know some stuff, and I, myself have had some experiences. But especially in those situations, make an appointment within 2 weeks. Go sign up and get something done at the free clinic. There's so many people out there, as Planned Parenthoods and stuff like that, that will help you get your testing done for minimum to no cost at all. And all it does is take your time. And you know what? I think that little bit of time is way more worth it than years of having to have an untreatable STD. Nobody wants to run around with herpes if they could have prevented it by a simple 1-hour visit to a sex center. And more so importantly, prevent yourself from really having to go to the sex center and wear a condom all the time. Men out there, unless it's, the type of situation where you really have this agreement with somebody and you're 100% comfortable, I would always suggest using a condom. You never know where that person's been. Nobody knows exactly where somebody goes at the end of the day, especially if you're not together. And living together and sharing a life together. So to put yourself at risk, there's been a couple of situations I have heard about in my day, and I'm sure some of the listeners have, and I'm sure you have, where somebody was sleeping with somebody, and then all of a sudden they get herpes out of nowhere. Well, that's because somebody decided they wanted to sleep with somebody else unprotected and didn't tell their partner about it, and now you've got a problem. And it rocks the whole foundation of trust. There's just a lot of things that come out of, just not being safe. So instead of just, I know that in our burning communities and in a lot of our communities we preach, radical self-expression and free love and stuff like that. But I think with all of that comes a heavy overtone of personal responsibility. You must always be responsible for yourself. You must always be ready to say no, or to say, I'm not comfortable with this, or to say put on a condom, or whatever it is that you have to say in that moment to take personal responsibility for your sexuality. And that, again, includes saying, I have an STD.
Exactly. Yeah. Excuse me. Is there anything else that you would like to touch on?
The only thing
noticing that we had a couple. Well, there's a couple people that are listening to us still, and we had a caller earlier, but they seem to have left us. But I wanted to make sure that we touched on everything else that you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, the only other thing that I have in terms of, what I like to preach in my sexual classes is also cleanliness is my last thing. It'll only take me a minute or two, but it's a very important thing. Vaginal and penile cleanliness, genital cleanliness, anal cleanliness, that's all very important. We touched on it a little bit before when talking about making sure that you change condoms with partners and when you're in group situations and such. I think we should also talk about, cleaning sex toys and just making sure that you're keeping areas clean overall when you're engaging in sexual activities. Let's be real, as sexy as things are, bacteria grows in places, and, a lot of us, when in the heat of the moment, we might not be thinking about that, but when you're going from certain sexual positions, like from, a vaginal to anal, back to vaginal type of deal, or anal to oral, something that you really have to remember is that, you are putting this person at risk to get serious infections and things like that. So, I really want to stress maintaining a clean vaginal and genital area during sexual practices. Make sure that in between, going from anal to oral, you're actually hopping in the shower real quick, and make it sexy. You can make it fun. You can make it awesome. You can make it a game. It doesn't have to be robotic and like, oh, got to go wash my penis off because we got to be safe right now. But it can be something sexy and hot. It just make sure you're doing that for your partner, because sometimes in the heat of the moment you might be really hyped about going from one place to another, but you're not thinking about washing up and stuff like that. And the same thing goes for toys. Make sure every use you're going in the bathroom afterwards, cleaning with warm soap and water unless the directions specify otherwise. And, for vaginal and penile cleanliness, there's this beautiful thing called, the self-care area at most stores. It's where you can find your Summer's Eve products. Men, they've got some things on the shelf for you guys now. But do yourself and your partner a service and make sure you're really clean down there, and it's more fun for everybody, but it also lessens the risk of other types of infections like yeast infection and vaginitis and stuff like that. And guys, you can get yeast infections too. How about that one? Yes, you can get yeast infections. And that happens because, either your lady didn't tell you she had one, but you can also get one because she's got a little something going on and she didn't clean up too well. So just make sure that you definitely, are keeping clean. And in festival season, I know some people out there, you do attend festivals and stuff. Let me stress to you, baby wipes and feminine care wipes, especially for you ladies out there. They have a pH balance that's made specifically for vaginal areas, but it's just all some very important stuff that will prevent more diseases from growing and manifesting, but B, will allow everybody to have a good, clean, fun time, and nobody's getting hurt out of it, and it's just awesome for everybody. Nobody wants to smell certain types of things and stuff like that, and it's good for everyone, and it's just safer that way. So I just wanted to give a good 2-minute preach about keeping the area 100%.
When you had mentioned the words about the heat of the moment, I had thought of a situation I had found myself in at once when I was in my early 20s, where when a guy comes to conclusion just before the lady and essentially the condom fills with sperm, it gets extra lubricated inside and you can slip out of it, and that's something that you need to be aware of so as to not get a sexually transmitted disease or get her pregnant or get the condom stuck inside of her and you then have to reach in and help her take that out. Like, these kinds of things happen. It sounds
all the
silly,
time.
but it happens, and they're definitely something that if you're climaxing together, that sort of thing could very easily happen. So remain aware of yourself as you possibly can in that situation at all times, because if you don't, it could lead to something completely by accident.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I also have heard of the condom breaking because of all the friction inside due to the sperm. So, guys, that's another one for you. Make sure that you definitely, as soon as you're done, you can keep making magic and playing with her or whatever you want to do, make her masturbate for a little while you get rid of the condom, but you definitely should, as soon as something like that goes down, make sure that you pull out and you take the condom off and you clean up and you make sure that there's no semen left on you. I mean, yes, it might be a little bit of a mood kill, but you can, again, segue to it in a sexy way that's also safe and not creating a situation where the very reason you're using the condom is become null and void because of how, you waited and allowed yourself to get soft enough to where it just fell off inside of her. I know I definitely, A, had that experience myself, but B, have heard some horror stories.
Exactly, and we obviously the theme of the day is safe sex practices. So, as well as social inclusion. So, don't be upset with people if they're not who you want them to be. It's not really any of your business. And obviously, consent is probably the most important part of all this when it comes to our general natural law rights as human beings who own ourselves and then can respect others in the same fashion.
Definitely. And just to kind of wrap it up too, I also want to, just again urge everybody to take responsibility for your own actions, communicate with your partner. Don't be afraid to say that you don't like something. Don't be afraid to say that you like something. And don't be afraid to, talk about experiences afterwards and let people know how you feel. No is a very strong word, and it should be used in any instance in which you aren't comfortable. I know that a lot of girls out there, especially girls my age, they don't have the confidence sexually to feel like they can tell a guy no. They're so about being accepted in that moment and this guy liking them and whatever it may be, that they won't tell this person that they're not comfortable with something, or, they just won't allow themselves to get as much out of the experience because they're not telling this guy something that they like, or this girl, whatever it may be, and same goes for guys my age as well. All sexual situations can be applied here. But I think that, communication and responsibility for oneself are two very big points that really are overlooked and underappreciated, but very valuable in having a very healthy sexual experience.
And I want to kind of also close here with a quote from Nicole Dodone. She had a great little TEDx as well. And at the end of her presentation, she had spoken about how the Dalai Lama had said, it'll be a Western woman who changes the world. And she took her exceptions with that and said, in her view, it'll be turned on women and those who dare to stroke them that will change the world. And I really appreciated that. I thought it would be something that should definitely be shared in this situation because there's nothing wrong with being passionate. We should be more passionate with our lives. We just also need to be respectful of other people's boundaries at the same time.
Definitely. And I think that, not to go too much further into it, but I think that we didn't talk about masturbation nearly enough, but masturbation is actually very healthy. It's okay, and it's something that will help to prevent from a lot of violent sexual situations. A lot of women are afraid to masturbate. A lot of women are very ashamed to masturbate. Like, I know that I will be up in the dildo store just having a good old time, shopping around, and I'll make eye contact with another woman, and I can see the awkward all over her face. And I will usually say something along the lines of, hey, honey, don't feel awkward. We all do it. It's totally cool. You should be doing it. You should be self-servicing. A lot of strain is put on relationships as well because people don't feel that it's okay to masturbate. And not only do I want you to masturbate, you can take a video of it if you're my partner and show it to me, and I will appreciate it. We can mutually masturbate in front of each other. I know that I masturbate when my partner is not home, and sometimes, he might be in the other room. Who knows? But the reality of the situation is it's a very healthy thing, and it's very necessary, and it helps you as a person get in touch with your body in ways that, you can't just necessarily get in touch like that. There's a very carnal and natural connection that you make with yourself when masturbating. So, I feel like it's definitely something out there that we should, be more in touch with, and don't be afraid to talk about it. Don't be afraid to, it's not just a thing that teenage boys do to a panty magazine in their room when they're 16, It's something that healthy adults do on a regular basis because it actually takes some of the sexual responsibility away from the partner, and it actually kind of recenters them and allows them to focus on other things besides their sexual stress.
That makes a lot of sense. I can understand how that can happen, especially if there might be a family who's having gotten themselves into an awkward scheduling situation because of their jobs. It's not always easy to find a moment, it's definitely an issue there. I can see how that's good to bring up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there not only with the time constraints that people will deal with, but also just, sometimes you're tired, and it's okay to be tired. It's okay to, not just want to have sex because you're busy and you have other things on your mind. That's totally cool. But don't shortchange yourself either because you can't physically have this experience with a partner. Go ahead and do it on your own in your own time. It's totally awesome. I give it 5 stars. And I think that more people should be in touch with that. And especially, again, ladies, it's cool to masturbate. If you don't have a vibrator, please feel free to contact us at Light It Up Philly, and I will let you know what kind of vibrator you can use and where to get it for cheap. And I honestly feel like, more people need to be cool with this part of sexuality, because it is the most personal part of sexuality. It is the most, it is becoming literally one with yourself in a way that could be beautiful if you take the stigma away from it.
There you go. Anything else you want to add?
Besides that, I just want to say thanks for having me on the show. In the next couple of weeks, I'm actually going to be writing an article about the way that STDs and teen pregnancy are such a huge issue in our society, with an organization I work with called OMAT, One Miracle at a Time. You can check them out at omat.org. But basically,
hang on one second. Could you repeat that? You cut out for just a second, and I didn't actually hear the .org.
It's omat.org, OMAAT.org. But basically what I'm going to be doing is an article in the next couple of weeks about, teen pregnancy rates in the inner city and STD rates, and just basically a whole stockpile of, facts about how sexuality is being, displayed to our youth, and the lack of education in it, and how that's directly affecting their major life decisions and the way that they live their lives. So if you want to check that out, that's my project for the kids, I guess you'd say, because I definitely think that that's something overlooked in our young society. But yeah, besides that, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. For those of you who do go out into the world, you can catch my next sex class at Big Dub Festival this summer. Badass Raves hosts it, Artemis, Pennsylvania. It's about 4 hours away from Philadelphia. But last year we had about 200 people or so at the sex class, and it was absolutely amazing. So you can check out Big Dub Festival at www.bigdubfestival.com, and I look forward to seeing some shining faces at the class this year.
Thank you so much for all of this information that you've presented, and being able to present it in the fun way that you've done so as well, because I definitely could not have done this show alone. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you for giving me a platform to talk about. It's always been such a wonderful, experience to conversate with you on every topic that we have ever talked about. We have spent quite some time talking about some things. So it's really awesome to be able to talk to the crowd about something I'm super passionate about and something that I'm semi-knowledgeable about.
Right on. I totally understand. For people who are interested in learning more about what is being done through the Zeitgeist movement, please go to zeitgeistmovement.com. Check out the movies, Zeitgeist Addendum, as well as Moving Forward. They're also on Netflix. You can catch them, so some of you have no excuse not to see some of the other things that we've got going on. As well as please check out the Venus Project and see where a lot of those ideas come from. Jacque Fresco is the guy that created the idea of the resource-based economy that is being expressed in these ideas when it comes to not using money and such. So please also take a look at that. It's definitely a positive direction for our culture to change towards. And next week's episode will be Mark Passio of WhatOnEarthIsHappening.com. He'll be doing a show where we will be expanding much further on the ideas of natural law principles that we've gone over today. So if you would like to check that out, please tune in again. I believe it's next. Hang on while I don't have it easily available, so I don't want to take up everybody's time. But if you look on the TalkShoe.com channel, or just go to TalkShoe.com and type in to their search engine the call ID number of this episode, which is 91812. Should be able to take you right to it, and they'll give you the information for next week's show. But I think that wraps everything up. Again, 1,000 times thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. We will also try and get this information out. We'll put further by sharing it to others by putting the website and to the MP3 on this. So if it's being recorded as well, if you want to hear it, if you missed any of it. I noticed a few people in the chat felt like they wished they'd been here since the beginning. So don't worry, and within an hour or so, it'll be available here on TalkShoe.com. And tomorrow sometime, you should be able to also subscribe and download to it on iTunes as well. So thanks again. This is Zeitgeist Philadelphia with Nicole from Lighted Up Productions. I greatly appreciate it. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks again, Nicole. Love you. Bye.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good night. Bye.